This is an add-on to my Big Cook video about more information about fire lighting and things, and what we do, and the different fungi and the different ways that we light a fire. So fire lighting is fundamental of forest school as a forest school practitioner. It's vital for cooking and keeping warm, and as a focal point, like for singing songs and reading, and just for quiet time in campsite for activities. Such being able to prepare, light and maintain different sorts of fires is very important, and it's equally important to know how to extinguish the fire as well, and to clear a fireplace correctly, how you left it, if it's if it's a temporary fire or if it's a permanent fire site, know how to put it out correctly. 3 elements are needed to make a fire. One's oxygen and heat and fuel. This is known as the fire triangle. Typically wood is used for the fuel for the fire. Oxygen is provided by the air that's flowing around it, and the heat is obviously comes from the spark or the match or the flint and steel that we use. If any of these elements are removed, then obviously the fire will just go out. I'm just laughing at my chicken because she's just pecking at my camera, sorry. You've got to consider appropriate to light the fire. If conditions are hot and really dry, is it worth lighting a fire? Because you could potentially catch fire to the surrounding area if it's a temporary fire, or if it's peaty ground, it could also catch fire. Maybe the underground root system, which can obviously cause a fire if it catches fire to the root system of the other trees, or low overhanging branches. Preparation is vital, obviously collecting plenty of dead wood and dry wood. This will typically be found in the ground, hung up on the branches, but it's if it's like wet or if it's rained recently, look under bushes, or like what I do, we always bring our own wood, because our area that we haven't got a lot of forest that we can use as wood, so we always buy our own kindling and things like that, or I'll bring it from my house because we've got a lot of pine trees, so I tend to bring lots of pine cones and things from my house, but we never burn wood from actually our site because we haven't got enough. You need to, obviously, when you're feeding the fire, you need to just put little bits on at a time. So the fires that I'm going to show you, what I need to show you is like the waffle fire. So a waffle fire, you tend to sort of, obviously this will be cleared and everything. A waffle fire is just like what it explains, or portcullis, some people might call it portcullis. So you're just layering it up like this. This tends to be a really good fire for cooking on, and it's quite slow burning, so things like that, like a waffle fire. And then you've got your TP fire, which a lot of people do now. TP fire, it sets on fire very quickly, and it gets very hot, but we don't get a lot of embers, so it is good for cooking on, but it burns really gets going really quickly. So if it's damp and things, it's probably a good idea to sort of do a TP fire and then let that die down and then build it up. So a TP fire is like a triangle, like a TP, like that. You tend to not want to get your fire above your kneecaps, the flames, because it becomes dangerous. So then what we do quite a lot, because where we live, it's where we do our site is quite windy, is I do a hunter's fire. So a hunter's fire, so your fire, it'd obviously be here, and you're resting over your sticks, and you tend to use long sticks because then you can just move it closer into the centre, so you tend to cross it over like this. This is really good for cooking on as well, because that's why it's called hunter's fire, for cooking meat and things on it. And you tend to cross it over like this. And then also what that does as well is it concentrates the air circulation. So if it's particularly damp or particularly windy, it sort of protects it from the wind of getting out of control. And if it's damp, it sort of concentrates all the air inside, so it burns quite good, and that you can cook on. So that's a hunter's fire. But your safety guidelines, you obviously need to stay calm when you're lighting fires, and no matter what happens, you mustn't panic. You must make sure that you've got plenty of water at the side. We always have 2 massive buckets, and we have a water tap as well, to make sure that's for emergency or putting it out. We obviously have got those buckets there with clean water in, just in case, which it never happened, but it could do if somebody burns themselves, or even I burn myself. I've got a water bucket there I can plunge my fingers in or my hand in. Never use paraffin, accelerants or things like that, Vaseline and things when you're starting a fire. Choose the site of your fire with care. Never light a fire on peat or in areas with underground root systems, like what I said before, or low branches. Never leave a fire unattended. Never underestimate the potential of the reach of a fire. So say you're only starting quite small of a fire, it can quite easily get out of control depending what wood you're using. You've got to pick your wood quite sensibly. I mean, I do tend to start my fires with pine because it's got a high calorific value of it, so it does get going really quickly. But then I add other wood on top, like a slower burning, like birch. You've got to outweigh the benefits of it. Ensure you can extinguish the fire quickly with water and whatever. So you must almost make sure that the fire that you've built is fully extinguished. I've showed in my cooking one that I extinguished the fire because it's a permanent fire site. We have bricks on our permanent fire that we rest our griddles on and things, because we do tend to do lots of big cooks on there. And I always spread out the bricks after the fires died down with water. We put the water on the outside and then gradually get in the middle by using the water that we've got. And I separate the bricks because the bricks do tend to stay quite hot afterwards, so we have to make sure that they're really cold, so we spread them out. Sometimes if they're not cold enough, I've got a big wheelbarrow full of water that I tend to plunge them in to leave them there for a good 20 minutes to cool down. But you've got to be really careful of that, because sometimes if they really are super hot, that they can fracture, so you've just got to be really careful. Try and minimise the impact of your campfire as well if it's a temporary fire. Make sure that it's kept quite small on your temporary fires. And you've got to make sure that you clear everything away. Again, like what I've said, no overhanging branches. Make sure it's not in the peat area or bedrock. There's certain different bedrocks that can split. What else do I need to talk about? Your wood burning guides, obviously you've got some wood that's better than others. Like I said, I start a fire with my pine and my pine cones, because this is really good. Tinder and kindling. Obviously this is tinder. You can use I use all of the pine, like your bark and your pine cones as tinder, and this is kindling with your smaller sticks. You can also use fungi, which I'm going to talk about in a minute a bit more in depth. So like I always start with a fire with pine. That's what I use because it gets really, really hot very, very quickly and gets a light. Then you can add on your other wood that you've got that's slower burning, so like your ash, your beech, blackthorn and hawthorn. Blackthorn is really good and hawthorn's really good, but obviously you've got to take in consideration the the spines and things, and it is easy to get hold of, and you're not destroying any blackthorn and hawthorn hedging and habitat, so you can't be destroying that. Also with deadwood, standing deadwood, you can use that, but again you've got to where as forest school leaders we're not only teaching the children how to start a fire, but we're also teaching children about biodiversity, and the deadwood we don't touch, because standing deadwood is actually a whole ecosystem for bugs and different creatures, and we've got stag beetles, and stag beetle larvae actually live in deadwood, so you've got to know what you're doing. If you're going to use deadwood, you have to make sure it hasn't got anything in there that you could potentially just burn creatures that you could burn, especially stag beetles. So I don't recommend using deadwood, but other people might, but I don't, because of the biodiversity that it holds for stag beetles and other burrowing animals. Obviously woodpeckers as well obviously use deadwood to get the creatures out of it, so I don't use that, but some people do. So good wood to use is ash, beech, blackthorn, hawthorn, and then you've got your maple and cedar and birch, apple, cherry, and your other fruit trees. Hazel is quite a good one, but some people don't like pine, but I usually start the fire with pine because it does go up really quickly. You can use your fire, your flint and steel strikers. That's what I use. You can also use a bow, which is a bow hand drill, and it's simply operated just by, it's like a long piece of stick, and you've got like a little hole drilled into another piece of wood, and it's got string round it, and you can just use it with one hand. Sometimes it's called a sew bow, sometimes it's called a violin, a bow drill, sometimes it's called a wood violin, because it's like you playing violin, depends where you come from. Just pause it there. You're not watching what I'm reading.